Tuesday's election results are in, and they did not match what many Christians prayed for and worked for to achieve. In Ohio, voters approved Issue 1, which legalizes abortion through all 9 months in the state constitution. Also, Issue 2 was approved, which legalizes recreational marijuana for adults. In Kentucky, a pro-life candidate for governor fell short in his election bid. In Virginia, voters by narrow margin handed full control of the state legislature to Democrats. So, what's this picture tell us? Is it a snapshot or a trend? Joining me now in studio to discuss this and much more, Brent Keilen, Vice President for Strategic Initiatives here at the Family Research Council, and he's with FRC Action. Brent, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thanks, Tony. Good to be with you.
So, big picture, what is your reaction to the overall results from yesterday's election?
Big picture, I'm kind of looking at two things, Tony. One is the candidate side and all of those races that we saw yesterday, and one is what was the impact of yesterday specifically on the life issue. You mentioned Ohio. If you look at just the candidate side, my perspective is that not that much actually changed. We're hearing a lot of headlines out today. I'm not saying there were no discouraging things that happened, but if you look at it overall, all the states that have had these elections this year, you have the Democrats who picked up control in the Virginia State House. They already had the state Senate,
right,
so they picked up that one chamber. Republicans picked up the governor's seat in Louisiana a couple weeks ago,
right,
so that's a net pickup for them. Everything else basically stayed where it was. We did have a Democrat governor win in Kentucky, but he was an incumbent.
Right.
It's very, very difficult to beat an incumbent. You look at Tate Reeves, Mississippi, very pro-life governor. Actually, you know, we had that Dobbs decision coming out of that state, very vocal on that. He won by about the same percent he won by his first term, things like that. So.
And that's despite the money. I mean, this election was about a lot of money, wasn't it?
It absolutely was. Actually, in the final weeks, the Democrats poured in millions of dollars into that seat. You don't make a strategic decision like that late if you don't think maybe you have a chance to win. They did that, but they still came out. He came out with that 5-6 point victory there. So absolutely a lot of money spent in Mississippi.
So let's talk a little bit about Virginia, because a lot of people are saying that Governor Youngkin failed here because he was trying to get he wanted to win the Senate, wanted to keep the majority in the House. He didn't win the Senate, although I think they did pick up a seat in the Senate.
Yes.
And so I think right now we're 51-48 in the Virginia Assembly. That's
right. That's right. So it does look like the Republicans picked up one seat in the Senate, didn't pick up that majority, but that's 21-19. So that's really, really close. And then the Democrats have a 51-48, couple seats still to be called there. But you look at that, and they went in with close majorities on either side. The Republican majority they went into yesterday with was a very narrow one. And historically, Tony, in Virginia, this is the norm. So for the Democrats to pick this up,
it's like a ping pong match.
It is. We remember 6-ish years ago, maybe it was, where that state House of Delegates control came down to pulling the name out of a bowl because it was tied. So this is pre-Dobbs and things like that.
So let's talk a little bit then about turnout. What was turnout yesterday in the overall average turnout across the nation in these elections?
You know, it really does depend on the state. It tended to be low. And again, you have to take that by state. You have some states like Mississippi where early voting is very limited. You have other states like Virginia where it's like, I think, 45 days. But one state I'll give you specifically is Kentucky. Okay, pretty red state there. The numbers I'm seeing there is that turnout was 30%. Okay, so you're talking about turnout levels in these off-year elections that's just dramatically lower than your presidential election cycle, for example.
So only 3 out of every 10 voters showed up.
That's right. That's right. And Bashir, Governor Bashir, who won re-election, the Democrat. So if you had 5% more people voting the other way, that would have shifted that whole outcome.
So it really does come down, and even these races in Virginia, many of these yet to be called, although it looks like the Democrats will have the majority there, but very narrowly winning.
That's right.
In some of those seats. And this, once again, just shows us how important voter participation, voter turnout really is.
It really does, Tony. We saw a number of examples of that yesterday. We had this election database that came out earlier this year where one group identified about 600 races historically in America that have been tied, and most of those in recent years. So it really does. It really does. Every vote matters.
So let's talk, we just got a couple minutes left here, Brent Keilen. Ohio, issue number 1, putting abortion into the Constitution. This is the 7th initiative that the pro-abortion crowds have won. They're now, declaring that this is the trend. This is what we're seeing, and they're saying this is going to be a 2024 election issue. And clearly, Ohio is a conservative-leaning state. Mm-hmm. It's a pro-life state. Again, money. I mean, this was a place where George Soros poured millions of dollars into the state. And, we had Attorney General Dave Yost on the program earlier in the week. There's something that's happened in politics in the last really 10 to 15 years, is that as we've moved from liberals to leftist, they're unhinged from the truth. They're untethered from the truth. They just distort the facts and scare people into voting. And people just got to quit listening to legacy media and to these ads.
It's exactly right, Tony. There's a number of things about Ohio that I think are important. It is discouraging, that measure passed 56 to 43%, I think. So we need to acknowledge that. And I think next year, 2024, is a huge issue for the life issue. So we need to be seeking God's wisdom. How do we address this? But like you said, we got outspent. The last numbers I saw were $42 million to $30 million. And if you look at some of the lies that were being pushed, I mean, people were saying that women would lose basic health care, life-saving care, which is absolutely not the case. So we have our work cut out for us there.
And I think, the way we're going to prevail is the same way we got to the place of Dobbs. That is, it took 50 years of winning hearts and minds, care pregnancy centers. In fact, I'm going to be emceeing our local care pregnancy center, Caring to Love Ministries, tomorrow night in Baton Rouge. We've got to continue the work. Our work is not over. It's really, in many ways, just beginning.
It's true, Tony. What came to mind for me this morning as I was kind of reflecting on those results was that verse, "Be not weary in doing good, for in due season we will reap if we faint not." So the only question we have to ask ourselves is, what is good? Because then there's a promise. If we don't faint, we will reap. So I would encourage people with that. And I would say if you have been watching but maybe haven't participating, we need your voice now.
Right.
We need you to pitch in. We need you to do everything you can. I do think the tide will turn. We're seeing some early indications of that, I think, but there's a lot of work cut out for us to do.
Well, just one is the elections, where 30% turnout. We should take advantage of the low turnout by turning out. If conservatives, pro-life voters will turn out, we can flood the zone, if you will, and we can win these elections. But you've got to listen to the truth and act upon it. Brent Keilen, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Appreciate it, Tony. Thank you.